You know, this is a good movie. I like this movie. Of all the sequels and remakes, this may be my third favorite movie after 1 and 2. And one thing that makes it terrifying is that Michael Myers is not just trying to kill teenagers anymore, he's trying to kill a 7-year-old girl. That's really stepping up the stakes, don't you think? I mean, you're really not supposed to do that according to the rules of the day. You don't put children in peril. Teenagers were not considered children, but they don't even do that now. Well, Lifetime Network does do that now. Lifetime will threaten the lives of young children, even babies, but nobody else does it. You know, sometimes people ask me, where are all the great exploitation movies today, Joe Bob? You know, the great low-budget horror films. They're on the Lifetime Network. You know, I love the Lifetime Network. Back in my acting days, I always wanted to be cast as the boyfriend, husband, charming stranger from out of town in a Lifetime movie of the week, because who wouldn't want that job? You get a great wardrobe in the early scenes. Then when the heroine finds out your nasty secret, you get to choose scenery, orchestrate a kidnapping, blackmail most of the cast, and use cruel weapons until you plunge to your death, burn up in a fiery wreck, get repeatedly stabbed as you rise again and again to terrorize the woman that you love, or suffer 77 bullet wounds from the nice savior replacement boyfriend that nobody remembers. Unfortunately, I never got that chance. I never got to go full-bore Ted Bundy because the Lifetime Network changed all the rules. After years of making movies with titles like Alone with a Stranger, Heart of a Stranger, Intimate Stranger, Stranger at the Door, Stranger in My Bed, Stranger in Town, The Familiar Stranger, The Stranger Beside Me, The Stranger I Married, Total Stranger, Double Check. I think those are all actual Lifetime movies. You know, they abruptly stopped making movies about the smooth-talking serial killer, and all the good male roles were replaced by psycho bitches. You know, Lifetime psycho bitch movies are some of the best low-budget horror films of the past 30 years. But a woman who steals your baby, or better yet, one of those women who tries to carve the baby out of your body when you're 8.5 months pregnant. Well, see, that falls a little short in the terror department simply because everybody in the audience already knows that mom must be reunited with her infant at the 1:57 mark of the 2-hour movie. Because leaving a baby in peril or showing the death of a child is one of the last real taboos of television. I mean, even a baby stricken with a rare disease must be miraculously cured by either science or God prior to the credit roll. Of course, not all psycho bitches are trying to steal babies. Some are simply trying to kill the heroine in order to steal her husband. But those would be the older Lifetime psycho bitches. You know, those are inspired by Fatal Attraction, as opposed to the younger ones that are inspired by The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Am I watching too much Lifetime? Did I know this much? In both cases, though, the psycho bitch is attempting to create a family that exists only in her bipolar mind. But the younger ones have an advantage because they show up, you know, I'm the perfect nanny, I'm the perfect helpful neighbor, I'm the perfect babysitter. Or if it's set in Beverly Hills, I'm the perfect wedding designer. You know, but the middle-aged psycho bitches, they have to be quirky or funny or brilliant, like the psycho bitch psychoanalysts, you know, so that they will be welcomed into the target family without any real need for any actual service. So, of course, you can't really feel sorry for the imperiled suburban woman with a psycho bitch bearing down on her because her women's intuition told her that this chick was bad news in the third scene. You know, she thought it was a little weird that the woman carries a pistol in her purse, but the woman said, oh, it's nothing, I'm from Kentucky. And so she just ignored her instincts. And so the message here, I think, is emotionally smart, intellectually stupid. You know, their intuitive powers are telling them, danger, danger, and their minds are telling them, be polite. You know, so the refusal to acknowledge reality in the third scene is what leads to having 3 butcher knife wounds in the final scene. And in fact, well, you know, I'm already talking about this, right? Let's analyze what the Lifetime Network is trying to tell us about women, okay? There was a time back in the 90s, I guess, when the main danger to women was men, especially young men attached to out-of-control daughters. So you had movies like Mother, May I Sleep with Danger. That's one of the iconic stories of the decade. Tori Spelling, ripped away from her family by a psycho boyfriend. Kirsten Dunst, She disrupts her family in 15 and Pregnant because her boyfriend knocks her up and then disappears. And of course, the all-time classic, Not Without My Daughter. It purports to be a story about a brave woman fighting to bring her child home from Iran, but at root, it's really a story about a heartless husband and a father who destroys a family and attempts to rob the mom of her daughter by criminal actions, aided and abetted by a society and a culture that is demeaning to women. So men can't be trusted, they're all abusive, they all have secrets, they're ungrateful, they're users, but apparently that was not enough jeopardy for the Lifetime woman. So enter the women who murder cheerleaders. That was the next step. You know, the best one was that one on HBO called The Positively True Adventures of the Alleged Texas Cheerleading Mom. But that became fodder for a whole series of Lifetime plots featuring conniving, jealous murderers in the guise of welcome wagon housewives. You know, Lifetime even did a straight ripoff of that HBO movie called Death of a Cheerleader, but it was more about mean girls than mean moms. So all these stories are about women who are not that crazy, but they're so eaten up with jealousy that they'll do anything to improve their standing in the community, including the violent elimination of any woman with a better public image. But here's the interesting thing to me about this particular subgenre. The evil woman must always be prettier and more popular than the good woman. You would think it would be the opposite, that the homely underachiever would be full of pent-up rage. But these killers are basically black widows. They're just using their dark powers on women instead of men. Sometimes the jealous outsider is an ex-girlfriend of the boyfriend or the husband. Sometimes she's a stalker. Sometimes she's a boss or a mentor. But her single-minded determination to eliminate the innocent protagonist must result in a cat fight, preferably one with deadly weapons. Wait a minute, excuse me. Girl fight. We don't say cat fight anymore. Girl fight. And then the evil woman must go to jail in the final scene. I'm not sure why the evil woman goes to jail while the evil man has to die, but that's the format. Okay, so it also helps the evil intentions of the jealous outsider psycho bitch if the woman at the heart of the story has a problem child. So the child can be a cokehead, quote, mixed up with the wrong crowd, porn addicted, that's in the classic cyber seduction, his secret life. The internet is always a font of evil influence over every child in a Lifetime movie. The point is that the psycho bitch can use these weakened, flawed offspring against the mom by giving them drugs, sympathizing with their wrong-headed grievances, stripping for them, telling them it's okay to turn tricks in high school. Remember co-ed call girl? Remember that one? Seducing them, or otherwise creating I understand you so much better than your mom scenarios. It's an updated version of the old stranger with candy fear that every parent harbors. If the mom accidentally discovers that her son or daughter is being manipulated, she will be smeared as a bad parent and forced to fight allegations of abuse or neglect. Now, the only way Lifetime redeems these plots is to blame the mom for cutting off her access to the sisterhood. She got so busy with other things in her life, controlling boyfriend, demanding career, an addiction to gin, that she loses access to her mom, her sisters, her female friends, and Oprah. She has no good information. So the patriarchy controls access to all advice. She fails to recognize the psycho bitch who enters her life because by cutting herself off from female society, she is becoming a psycho bitch. And I really think things were better, though, when we males were causing all our problems, really. I mean, you should have hired me, people, because I could have shown you how it's better to burn me up than to burn yourself up, sweetie. Baby, ma'am, strong 21st century woman who would never fall victim to jealousy or revenge or baby stealing. Okay, I got to get out of this. How many people did I piss off just now? All right.